Hey guys, today I want to tackle a little bit of a controversial topic, and that is Harley versus Indian. Now, when it comes to brand loyalty, there are always a number of arguments for and against a product, but you've got things like Ford versus Chevy, Coke versus Pepsi, and in today's case, you've got Indian versus Harley. Now, in terms of size, Harley is far larger than Indian motorcycle. They sell upwards of 180,000 motorcycles a year versus Indian, which maybe sells 30 or 40,000 motorcycles a year. So it's huge, 5 times bigger. Their dealer network is much larger. They have many more parts to choose from. But like all motorcycle manufacturers, Harley is in decline. The motorcycle industry is in decline. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm so bullish on Indian, why I think Indian's making some good moves, and it makes sense to have a competitor like Indian Motorcycle be vibrant in this market. So let's get into it. Probably the most important difference to me, and was the most significant in my decision to go with Indian, and that is value for dollar. I'm going to be comparing the Indian Pursuit DarkHorse with premium package versus a Road Glide Limited with equivalent bells and whistles on it. I'm not going to make any argument here that Harley is more or less expensive than Indian out the door. However, I think you get more standard features on an Indian. You get more power with an Indian, you get more storage with an Indian, and you have things like all LED lighting all around the bike. You've got things like better suspension that's standard on the DarkHorse Premium. It's all electronically adjustable. You got upside down forks, arguably a more powerful stereo system. The electronics are better. Lots of value add for basically the same price. I mean, I walked out of the dealership with this bike for around $38,000. I had an identical $38,000 quote from Harley Davidson when I test rode and looked at a Road Glide of the same color, basically. You just get more for your dollar, and you need more for your dollar because there's less aftermarket parts for this bike than are on a Harley. But it kind of bugs me when you're spending upwards of $40,000 for a motorcycle. Some of this stuff ought to just be included from Harley Davidson. I think that's just the truth, that you just get less for the same amount of money, and you're really paying kind of a premium for the much larger and more recognizable brand.
Another thing I want to talk about is just generally the aesthetics of the bike. So I think both Indian and Harley, when it comes to, say, a frame-mounted fairing, I think, they look pretty similar. I don't think there's any arguing about that. They both, Indian clearly borrowed from Harley in terms of this look. This is no different than what car manufacturers do. So I don't know why everybody makes such a big fuss about it. I mean, it's a good selling bike. It may be, I think it's probably arguably the most or the best selling bike for Harley Davidson. So why wouldn't Indian try to hone in on that market? I think Indian's done a better job. I like the single headlight a lot better. I like what they did with the running lights, and it just really has a nice aesthetic. All the turn signals are built into the fairing, and so you don't have any little bibs and bobs like hanging off the side like what you do on Harley. And in fact, I believe that Harley Davidson, with their redesign, has integrated their turn signals, etc., into the fairing. So anyway, I just think, other than my bike's a little dirty right now, I think they've done a really nice job with how it looks. I've got the tour pack off right now, so I've kind of got it in Challenger mode, which is another plus to me, is having kind of 2 bikes in one. I can very quickly remove the trunk, and I've got a performance bagger. And if I want to go on a trip, I can swap the windshield, and put the trunk back on, and my wife and I have a nice, comfortable ride heading out. So let's hop on this bike and let's talk about some other stuff. All right, I really enjoy the the way this bike shifts. I was a little concerned about it when I first got it. When I was in break-in, I really had a tough time shifting, but it turned out this was really just an issue with the clutch adjustment, which I adjusted it myself and got it working better. And then when I took it in for its 500-mile service, they adjusted it again, and now it runs great. You know, no complaints there. Another item I want to talk about is just the way the dashboard is laid out here. On the Road Glide, all of this right here, which is very easy for me to get to, is up here and kind of way the hell away from you. And I really didn't like that. I mean, it's not a deal breaker or anything, but I really didn't care for how that works. The main issue I have with the Ride Command system is its integration with CarPlay, which sucks. If you're curious, it stops working all the time. The Bluetooth music stops working all the time. It's had several software updates and they haven't solved this in any way. This is something that Indian really needs to work on. But in terms of just Ride Command by itself, it's got a lot of great features. It's very easy to swipe through stuff, and it keeps track of a lot of information. There's a lot of cool data that you can look at before and after you get done with a ride. The cruise control, the start mechanism, the lights are very well thought out. I think they've done a really good job with making sure all the appointments on this bike are easy to get to and easy to use, except for CarPlay. The suspension is really great. It is a nice plush ride. It really absorbs bumps really well. The bike doesn't vibrate too much. We have an adjustable rear shock that is done right through the Ride Command system. I think it is heads and tails above what Harley provides out of the box. Almost everybody who buys a Harley ends up doing a new suspension on their bikes, and that stuff can run into the thousands of dollars. So, you know, that is not a trivial expense to have to absorb after the fact, especially when you're paying $35,000–$40,000 for a bike. So I'm really happy with the suspension. I haven't done too much two-up riding with my wife yet, but I suspect it will be pretty good. And frankly, Honda did a really good job with this too. They had the same kind of adjustable suspension in their bike, and it was really comfortable on long rides. Another feature that I think Indian does a better job with is their windscreen. This is an adjustable windscreen. I'm going about, 45 miles an hour right now. I'm not catching any wind in my helmet, really. But as I get up to 55 or so, it's going to start buffeting my head. But that's because I have this low 8-inch windscreen on here. But when I get up to highway speeds, you know, I'm just not screwed. I can just simply tap this button right here, and I can push the windscreen up, and this will push all the air over my head. I will not buff it at all, even with this low windscreen. And I really don't understand why Harley doesn't address this issue on their bikes. That was a decision maker for me, honestly. The Goldwing I had also had an adjustable windscreen. A lot of bikes in this class do, and I think it really ought to be something that gets considered. I think the bike looks great. I think the bike rides great. It's got amazing power. When I want to get going, I just pull on the throttle and I'm going, you know. It's very simple, and you know, it does not want for power. I think it's very clearly and well documented that this bike has more power than the Road Glide. So you've got plenty of power, the bike looks good. I love all the LED lighting all around. It's got great running lights come out of the box, something you don't get with Harley. So to kind of just pound home my point, you just get a lot more value out of this bike than you do out of the equivalent Harley Davidson. My other point that I'm trying to make is that even if you don't like this bike, even if you don't like Indian motorcycles, or you're really hung up on not having a Harley, the fact that Indian is a good bike and is getting a lot of sales and is growing is really good for Harley Davidson riders as well. They just will not be able to ignore the progress that Indian's making. They will have to make some adjustments. They're going to have to add some more features to their bike. So at the end of the day, you're going to get more stuff for your money too. So I think having a healthy competition in the marketplace is really good for everybody involved. Now that's a bike. Alright, so those are kind of the main points, things that influenced my decision to buy this bike. I think Indian's doing a great job. I really look forward to watching them iterate on this platform, this Power Plus platform that they have, which I think is the best stock system out there right now. People aren't buying motorcycles. There's less expendable income out there. So I think if you're considering a bike like this, you know, you've got the money set aside, or you're not hurting the way a lot of people are. But I do think it's going to affect sales across the board, both Harley and Indian. Interest rates are really high too, so you know, that's just all going to translate into less bikes. So hopefully Indian can survive all that, and we'll be talking about Indian versus Harley for years to come, because I think it's really good for everybody when the marketplace has competition. So let's head back in the garage and we'll wrap this up.
Okay, so there you have it. That's kind of my reasoning behind why I ended up with this Indian Pursuit. I really enjoy this bike so far. I have no dislike for Harley Davidson. They're a fine bike. I've owned Harleys. I still think they make incredibly good looking bikes, but I'm really happy that Indian Motorcycle provides competition to Harley in the market. I think that is good for both Harley and everybody else, because it forces these companies to examine what they're doing with these motorcycles. It forces them to innovate and to give you more value for dollar. And so I would expect that as Indian continues to grow, and it seems like they are, that you're going to see more of a reaction from Harley Davidson. I think you're already seeing that with the new CVO models, where they've adopted a number of the features from Indian into their bikes. A lot of those comparisons are going on. So what do you think? Do you think the decision to go with Indian was sound? Do you disagree with my points? Leave me some comments down below. And I really like to have this conversation with you all. I think both manufacturers are making some wonderful motorcycles, and that's just good for everybody. So as always, guys, thanks for watching.